Good afternoon, and welcome to our virtual career spotlight. My name is Lisa Kuntz-Samanuk, and I'm the Chinook School Division Industry Education Program Facilitator. Our career spotlight today will highlight careers in the agriculture industry, as well as entrepreneurship and sales. If you are interested in learning more about grain and pulse production, cattle, or cattle procurement and sales service, this spotlight is perfect for you. On behalf of Chinook School Division and the Regina and District Industry Education Council, I am pleased to be able to have Cindy Lowe with us here today from LZ Farms Incorporated. Cindy and her husband Will own and operate this mixed operation of grains, canola, lentils, durum, oats, rye, hay, and black char cross cattle. LZ Farms is on a century farm located near Kyle, Saskatchewan, along the beautiful landscape of Saskatchewan Landing. The Lowe's first relatives bought the land in 1906. In 2020, the Lowe's farm was featured in Grain News. You can check out the article online entitled Meet Your Farming Neighbors, the Lowe's. Here you'll find out more about Will's career journey from earning an agriculture economics degree at University of Saskatchewan to working at Cargill Meat Solutions and Northwest Consolidated Beef Producers to an owner and operator of LZ Farms for the past 13 years. Cindy's vast and diverse experiences in the agriculture industry are sure to intrigue you. In addition to her family's business, Cindy has experience as a banker and has a long career as a teacher. She currently works with Saskatchewan Distance Learning, is a leader in business education and financial literacy across the province. Please join me in welcoming Cindy here with us today. Following her presentation, we will have a question and answer period. Take it away, Cindy.
Well, thank you, Lisa, for the introduction. And I'm really excited to be here just to share our journey and, look at students, give them exposure to career paths in the agriculture industry, whether it's production or supporting the industry. I'd like to start by showing a picture here. This is land that we purchased from Will's uncle. It's been in the family farm for probably 30, 40 years and in the uncle's land, and then we bought it last year. So this is overlooking the Saskatchewan River on the way to Cabri. So it would be west of the Sask Landing Bridge. And it's mostly pasture land. It's, of course, uninhabitable and not farmable for crop, but we put our cattle here and then they can graze the hills and go down and water at the river. Now, agriculture is, we are a mixed farming operation, which means we are busy 365 days of the year. And I was raised on a cattle farm down by Mankota, and I always thought I wouldn't marry a farmer, but love the land and love being outside and raising food for the world to eat. And so I was drawn to, someone of that same interest. And so Will and I met and talked about farming and having this as our career. So this is our mixed cattle. So we have Black Angus cows. We like to buy them from a herd. So Will looks for consistency of design, consistency of herd, and then you have consistent offspring that you can sell as packages. And we'll get into the marketing side later, but we usually breed them to white Charolais bulls and come out with a nice silver calf. Silver calves actually are shown to grade higher and get better returns and yields on the carcass. So inevitably we're producing beef, right, for the world. And you see this nice looking calf in the back. He would be probably a spring calf, maybe only 6 months old. And he's a nice big size. They have better gain and then more pounds per, more meat per pound. And that means a higher grade. So Will's background started in university in taking agriculture economics. I took a degree in finance. And we moved to Alberta. Will got a job as a cattle buyer at Cargill Meat Solutions and procurement. Procurement means where you buy cattle to come into the feed, to come into the slaughter plant in High River. At that time, they were producing 3,500 head per day and selling majority of their meat to McDonald's. So if you've ever enjoyed a burger at McDonald's, you probably were consuming some of the product that came out of the Cargill plant in High River. Brooks has a plant as well as Lakeside there as well. And so when Will worked there, he learned how the importance of grading and the importance of value on the carcass. And so more meat per pound, basically on the coming off the line. You want them finished so that there's less waste, that the higher quality AAA grade of meat comes off that carcass. And he found that silver calves were producing that, time after time. And that's what made us decide to produce a silver calf with a Black Angus Charolais cross. Now you can get tan calves as well if you have a red Angus cow and a Charlie cross. But breeding, that breeding program is important to us so that we have better value for our customers and less days on feed and finish. Part of his job was marketing the cattle and visiting farms. This is us at the top of our hills, and it's not all good. There's difficult days, and I think part of my lesson today is about perseverance. This picture is our last year's canola crop. You can see that the grasshoppers took the entire crop down to the ground. They actually were eating the roots. We saw gophers eating the roots underneath. We saw crickets hanging off the canola. And what didn't finish it with the grasshoppers, the hail came along and finished it as well. So I think one of the lessons in today's entrepreneurship is perseverance and determination, weathering hard times, and actually being financially prepared. And not that we were financially prepared to have a total loss on our crop, but it's taking measures so that you are diversified, that we have off-farm income, and that we protect ourselves with insurance, namely crop insurance in our case. Some people opt out of programs like this, the egg stability, saying it costs money, you have to do all this paperwork and reporting. But I think that's part of it, and that's part of to ensure your safety and security and longevity of the business. So a student could get into crop production. This is Will moving our bulls down. Bulls are a big part of our herd, right? You want healthy bulls. So herd health is a big part of what we do. And we monitor our herd, vaccinate regularly, protect them against illness. We want high quality, healthy animals. So if one animal dies, there's a $2,500 loss. And so we take great care to protect our animals and keep them healthy and safe on the farm. This is another look at the crop from last year. And so last year actually was a mixed year because it was a terrible drought. But because we're diversified and we have crop and cattle, we were able to, produce cattle and sell them for a gain, like with our calves. But then we were also able to, I call it upcycling. So we could take product that was not salvageable for human consumption, for example, this crop, and swath it and bale it and use the bales to mix. We have a mixer, and we mix the feed with other non-salvageable foods. So we have lentils that maybe were spoiled or not quality grade to sell for human consumption. We grind them up. We buy pellets from a nearby production facility. We would take bales off the land, and so we were able to upcycle marginal production land and marginal production grain into a high quality protein source for our animals. We've bought corn in the past to add some grain to that, and really upcycle and produce high quality feed for our cattle. And I consider farming to be the ultimate recyclers or upcyclers. This is some spring runoff, and so that's where we sort of want to talk about feed and risk management. The other part is, of course, quality feed. And when I talked about feed, but also water source, you want to make sure there's a healthy water supply, that there's good runoff. We've had some instances in Saskatchewan where the water quality was high in salt, and animals get affected. So animals need water just like we do. And so we take measures to make sure there's quality water. We have solar watering systems out, so the animals don't have to go into a dugout like this and get stuck or get muddy, or they can get foot rot or foot disease. And so we would have a water solar system that we buy them from Lumsden. And so there's another aspect to agriculture industry, supporting the industry. So these water facility manufacturers out of Lumsden, they come with big water bowls. They have solar, they have wind. Actually, we have battery. We have 3 types of power to make sure we have power. And they would collect the water in a dam or in a dugout into a safe watering bowl for the animals to come up and drink. We actually have a system on one of our pieces of land that's motion detected. And so when the animals walk up, it senses the animals detect motion, and then it would fill the well with water, and then it goes down, up and down. And the point of that is, in the winter, we don't have to chop ice or have the animals go onto a dugout that may be frozen, fall in and freeze and die and have to retrieve them. So it's dangerous for the animals that way. So, water is a big part of our planning. And again, risk management, right? Managing the risks of what we're exposing ourselves to for financial loss. Here's a picture just of some mud. We had a terribly wet spring, which was weird, and ended up with a dry summer. And I think that's the testament to perseverance. I mean, we have celebrated our 20th anniversary of incorporation in 2023, I guess. And one of the things we look back on is good times and bad. There are things that will test your financial strength, your mental strength, and this is one example. We were pulling vehicles out, we were flooding in the wrong places, and then we go from extreme wet to not being able to seed in a timely fashion, to getting our crop in the ground, to then grasshoppers and gophers and then an extremely long period of drought. I don't think we got rain for 2 months straight. And so the crop basically come out of the ground dry and almost cooked already. So, perseverance, determination, managing your risks and doing adequate risk analysis is a big part of managing our farm. Do you have any questions, Lisa, so far, or should I?
No, right now I'm amazed at the lessons in perseverance and determination that you've shared so far, and just the diversity that's needed in order to be successful in farming today and have an ongoing farming career. From managing risk to there's just so many different components that you're doing, more than just growing
Yeah. And
feed and
yeah.
animals.
And egg production is not for the faint of heart. I mean, and it's not something that we inherited. We bought our land. We bought it from Will's dad. We bought cattle. We started small. We started before we even had a set of corrals. We were borrowing neighbors' corrals. We took measures to enter the industry slowly and affordably. We had a neighbor, thankfully, who sold us 3/4 of the land. We farmed with Will's dad, rented the equipment. Will did the labor for his dad, used his dad's equipment. So we were able to and Will was still working full time. So working full-time job at Cargill, coming home on weekends to farming his dad, and then farming becomes sophisticated, not just in financial, but also in operations. So financial management, you've got contracts, and you want to find, the best price for your crop, because our crop prices are not determined by us. We're not like another business that sets our prices based on our input costs. Our input costs are set by someone else, whether it's a fertilizer company, the fuel, the carbon tax has a huge impact on the cost of our doing business. Power, right? We have power to run at our different grain bins. We need power at these sources. So all of our inputs are essentially set by someone else. And then we grow our crop, and then our production, our product that we have to sell, we don't set that price either. We get whatever the market bears. It's a market and supply, demand and supply operation. So if the supply of beef is high, we know that prices will be low. And so we can't feed our animals forever. And actually, what happened over the years is we had our animals on feed. We usually, a lot of people do sell them in the fall. And what we found was that fall price wasn't quite good enough. And so we decided to start backgrounding our animals, and not right to finish. We did finish one time, but that requires a sophisticated set of feed, which is what they might do at a feedlot. And again, days on feed, you want to shorten that up because it's cheaper to get the animal finished more quickly. Like grass-fed beef is a thing. And just to understand grass-fed beef, imagine grass-fed. So imagine this crop you're looking at, we're fencing. Here's my son's. Imagine feeding cattle on a section of grass. So there's some rye in here and some grass. So if we had to feed our animals on grass, it would take them a very long time to put on enough weight to be finished, to be ready for, to go to McDonald's. And so grass-fed beef is a thing to appease, environmentalists, that they think that's a better way to go. It actually creates more emissions and more time that the animal is, producing in the environment. So if we're looking at time on with machinery and time for the animal, all of that is added to the environment. And so it's actually, feeding our animals in a shorter period of time gets the animal to finish better, is actually better for the environment, if you want to look at it that way. But I mean, even just supporting the industry, look at what we're using here. We've got trucks, but we've got, the fence post manufacturer. We've got, this is a fencer. Land needs to be fenced all the time. And then we're fencing land that we farm. So we're farming the land. We would bale this. And then we would, if we don't bale it, if we combine it, we would drop the straw and bale that as well. and then add that to the feed that we feed the animals. So we're always looking for ways to literally scrap everything we can off the ground to make the best feed we can for animals. And it's a team effort. I mean, we have 4 children. We have 1 hired help. We haven't really had much hired help over the years, just occasional harvest help. You'll see a yellow patch in this picture in the back. There would be a chunk of canola that we have seeded on some wetter land. You know, so the land varies in terms of quality. This is the boys in a field. It wasn't a great crop that year, but you make do. And that's another thing, is we're always challenged by Mother Nature. We use horses to move our cattle, and then but we're challenged by Mother Nature. Here we are moving our cattle from pasture to another pasture because one would run out. We would graze it right down to nothing and then move them to another. So we have rotational grazing you have to take into account to make sure, again, your most efficient use of your resources available, so there's no waste. And if you want to think about farming as the ultimate conservationists, because we can't afford to waste. We can't afford to even, waste any feed, waste any fuel, waste any time, because time really does cost us in the long run if you're not efficient in how you use your resources. So
So what's
maybe
the
I'll
best way for students to get these lessons? Like if you don't come from a family farm, can you be a farmer if you don't have that background?
Here, that's a good question. Here's Will giving a tour to the agriculture and the classroom teachers. Can you be a farmer? I mean, you can. The industry has extremely high costs to enter. I'll just show you a couple pieces of equipment. We don't farm the newest. We just can't. We are very conservative with what we spend. So this is 2 combines that happened to be a good year that year to both be dumping at the same time. But normally we run only 1 or 2 combines. A combine like this might cost you $80,000, and that's cheap. A new combine, a good one, these big new ones you see in the field, are going to be $400,000, $500,000. So, we kind of think, well, this combine, we needed to do the job, right? To combine the field. To enter the industry is very capital intensive. So can someone be a farmer? You can, but you have to be conservative. You can't just put it all in and take on huge debt. I think debt is your enemy when you're farming, because when you take on debt, this is my background in finance, talking as a banker. I was a banker too. I was a banker in farming communities. We had customers that wouldn't manage their debt because farming is so cyclical and so seasonal and weather dependent. I mean, we're not just talking about consumer demand for a product or price for our product. We're talking about Mother Nature too. So if we don't get the rain, if we get a chunk of hail that goes through, a lot of this stuff is out of our control. So our revenues, we can't count on our revenues. It's not like we're getting the same monthly wage every time. Probably that's why I work off the farm, and Will worked off the farm for a long time too. So managing your debt, if you jump into this and take on a huge amount of debt, you don't have future certainty of cash flows. And that's what you need to service the debt, is future certainty of cash flows. So if someone were to enter the industry, you might want to do it like we did, where we both worked full time. You work full time, and maybe you see if you can rent some land, but rent some equipment from a neighbor, co-farm like a little bit like we did, and start small. One way might be to rent some pasture and start with a small herd, a few cattle, but raising your feed and feeding it to the animals is the best way. But having some income to put into the operation, it's no different than any other entrepreneur business where you start with an injection of cash. You can't just start by borrowing everything. You have to start with some savings, some deposit to put down payment on land, to lease. Maybe leasing equipment is a better idea. For sure, we've leased a lot of equipment. There's a write-off for the farm, and you don't have these high lump sum payments up front. I mean, we started slow. We did not start with cattle. We just started with grain. And then the reason we got into cattle is we had a piece of land that was very high in production with hay, and we were baling it and selling it. And then we thought, well, you know what, why don't we feed this to our cattle? And that upcycling mentality began, where we take our marginal grain. I'm going to see if I can find you a picture of our mixer. So we have this big mixer. It's like a big mix master, and we'll put some hay and molasses in there. It's like candy. This is actually a good picture of some of the cleaning. The canola's in here, but you can see all this black stuff here. That black stuff would be stuff that we wouldn't want, or like some of this gray stuff here. So canola is supposed to be black, so that black seed is what we want. Sorry, the chaff, the pink gray stuff that's coming out there, that's something we would want to clean out and then use in another way to feed our cattle. So can someone enter the industry? I would say slowly, with a great amount of capital up front. You have to work and save up. Like all of these things are heavily high purchase. Like this is a cattle chute that we bought. We leased it, paid it off slowly over time. And so you have to really manage your finances. I think that financial risk behind farming, this whole cattle setup would have been $40,000, $50,000. We would have financed probably 7, 8 years. So having a spreadsheet, managing your money, often farming is a team operation. You can see we've got our kids here helping us along the way. So it's not for the faint of heart. I think agriculture, though, what's cool about this, every day is different. Every day is a day outside. You've got endeavors like climbing this bin. You can see Will's halfway up trying to check the level of the bin. He's tapping as he's going up. There's really no scientific way to tell how full the bin is. You dump grain in and hope that it doesn't get to the top and run over. So you fill it up and check it out. So every day is different. I mean, Will loves his job. This is Walker climbing up on the ladder. So Will loves his job, but I think it's very much a team effort. Here you see actually the 3 generations. This is Will's dad in the middle. Will, this is a late night picture. I think I took it probably at 9:30 or 10. Actually, it might have for sure 10 because it was dark and it was August. So it's a family event and a family affair. We don't drive the newest equipment simply because we're not interested in taking on that much debt. The debt we have has been used to buy land, which has been our best investment. Our first piece of land we bought in 1995 for $55,000. Land in our area is going for 400,000 for the same piece of land. So I mean, for us to buy more land at this point is difficult to justify a 400,000 for that same. You have to get enough revenue to pay for that. But what people are doing in order to enter the industry is taking older land that may have paid 55,000 and borrowing against that and dollar cost averaging the price of land out. What might be, if a person can't enter the industry, you could work at a farm. So this is our mixer. Will's mixing. You can see the cattle gathered around. They know that some good stuff's coming. So he would have taken that marginal crop, those bad lentils we couldn't sell, those bales that are not, good for human consumption. All of this mixes, put some molasses, some pellets, some corn. It makes this candy they just run after and chase. One of the things students might consider is supporting the industry, right? In egg sales, we need people to they sell this for a living, they service this for a living, they look at feed grain. Oh, that's our tired dog helping us. But even supporting the industry in terms of feed, agrologist, visiting the farm. So we hire help to that's one thing Will does spend a lot of time doing is planning the year, planning the crops, what are inputs, what are we going to need for fertilizer. So we work with an agrologist in Swiftcurrent, and we have a guy that comes out, he works for Kevin, and soil samples, and they analyze this dirt. So we want accuracy for, what's the moisture level? How deep is the moisture level? They'll tell us that. They'll measure the land for nutrients and recommend fertilizer applications. And even that, and then spraying, they'll monitor it for weeds and spray, they'll monitor it for disease, for bugs, and then they'll monitor maturity of the crop as it goes along. So Will doesn't have time for that end of the business, right? He's busy fixing equipment and applying fertilizer, but we're not going to waste and apply more than we have to. So accuracy of the fertilizer applications, we might need more in one section, less in another. Same with spray for bugs, right? We're not going to spray the whole field unless we have to. So we have GPS so that we don't cross over. So it maps out the field. And those things cost money, but they're important because they actually can save you money instead of just randomly spraying or applying the same amount across the field. So there's lots of jobs in supporting the industry, more than just production, because we need those people, those specialists to help us too. We of course need mechanics. If anyone wanted to enter egg industry, it could be through the trades or through that agronomy kind of side, because we need help, we need advisors. Now, the one thing I've thought about often for a farm, we have kids that help us, but we always need help is getting good help that have skills. And it's hard to recruit and find people that want to come work for someone else. One of the things that might be in the future is corporations that would sell shares to their employees, just like Royal Bank would sell shares to me when I worked there, is some partial ownership. They get partial benefit in the profits of the business and get partial dividends back as owners of that business. Not that we're going to sell the farm and give it away, but there's a direct investment in the outcome. And I've thought about that in a couple reasons, because one, you may get better employee retention, but you also have them invested in the cost of the business. We've had employees over the years that are, accidents happen, but somewhat wasteful. We had one guy drive over on his phone, drive over a box of chemical. Well, there's a $400 waste. Or another one, unfortunately, dropped a bale on a bull's head, and killed the animal, and just not watching or paying attention. The very costly mistakes, accidents, right? Hitting another vehicle or things that cost us money come out of the bottom line. If a person, that's my money, that's my ownership, and you take that to heart. So having employees invested in our business for the financially might be a way for people to enter the industry. I even thought about if we had to hire someone or helping our kids take on, I'm not going to just hand over the land, but maybe partial ownership of some cattle. These 2 heifers are yours in exchange for this work. So people can enter the industry. It's very expensive, capital intensive to buy land, to buy equipment, but there are ways. And I think getting people invested in the industry, believing in what we do. I mean, we love what we do here. You see Will and Walker, they're sampling some grain here. This feeds the world. And so when we look at the population of the world, 7 billion anticipated to grow to 10 billion, we need better yield per square acre. We need better yield on the farmland we have. And we see good farmland being taken up due to urban sprawl, right? Cities grow, we need more land. You see that out of Regina very clearly. You've got farmland that's being developed into housing. So are we replacing that yield from that piece of land? Where is that coming from? We have less land. We are not producing more land. Land is the only commodity that never depreciates, the only asset that never depreciates, and we're not making more of. So how do we get more production per square inch, per square acre, to feed the world? And so we can't necessarily go vertical very easily. And we know protein's an excellent source. So more intensive farming, people sometimes talk about the merits of that, but that's kind of where we need to go. We need people to find innovative ways to make our yields higher. And you've seen research happening at the University of Saskatchewan on drought resistant varieties of grain. We see, feeding practices that put on more weight on the cattle. And so these are the kind of jobs that are in the industry that can support farmers as well. I mean, we intend to farm, and our children intend to farm with us, our boys. But there's a give and take. Once you're done paying off your land, those land loans are huge. Then there's some cash flow to then grow the farm, build a shop, buy more new equipment. Like those are things we have not invested in. One being a shop, because it doesn't make us money, right? In the end, we're pinching our pennies to make sure we can pay our debt payments and not overextend ourselves. And again, that's the finance talking. Like, I think this is big business. Revenues are in the millions of dollars every year when you look at and we're small. And so managing your cash flow, you're managing $1 million of cash flow in and out. You can't afford to just go off and take a vacation or buy something new because you happen to get a canola check for $100,000. That all of that 100,000 and more is probably spent on fertilizer. We've got a load of pellets coming in that's going to be $30,000. So this is it's a big industry and a big business and a very important part of the world. And if students, I think the fruits of our labor is what's cool about it. When we see the droughts, the tough years, I think that's farmers don't farm to collect an insurance check. I mean, that's what we'll get to pay the bills, but we're the eternal optimists. If you look at it the other way, last year was bad. Next year we are planting a crop right now, we're preparing, and so that means we have optimism of the future. And looking at weather patterns and cycles, I just want to speak to that for a second, because we're talking about Mother Nature. We look at weather patterns and prolonged droughts, and if we look backwards, we're now in a bit of a prolonged drought. We've had drought off and on since 2016. We probably figure we had one good year of good crop production in that time. Since 2016, we're 2024 now, 8 years of pretty rough times and low yield. Let's look backwards. 1980s was another tough time. The 80s, the drought in the 80s. I was a kid. It's funny, I married a farmer because I distinctly remember how difficult it was for my parents, and they were also mixed farmers, mostly cattle that we had, but Dad had gone into diversified into lentils to help pay the bills on the farm. And then before that, we had 50 years. Before that was the 30s, prolonged drought and depression for 10 years. And then before that, they talked about the 1880s. When they talk about this being Palliser's Triangle and the drought area. So it kind of is in 50-year cycles. I was talking with my uncle who's an agrologist, and these weather patterns come and go. I mean, yes, we have more population on the earth now, but we also, it's a bit of a cycle. And so hoping we're at the end of that 50-year cycle, being from 2016 to 2024, that we get a good year this year. But you really are looking at science, and you're looking for very technical help, like with an agrologist or soil sampler. We hire veterinarians, we hire medical people to help us with the cattle. Mechanics, we get a welder to come out to the farm and fix, because a person cannot be good at everything. I mean, Will has started in the cattle industry selling cattle with Cargill, moved to another company selling cattle, and actually he does that still on the side now. So Will's skills are in ag economics and ag business, and so he markets the cattle. He takes pictures. So the pictures I showed you, he'll list them and sell them online and for cattle, and get a commission. So he'll drive down and he might, here's a picture of a herd. He'll take pictures of people that have cattle, sell it direct off the farm, so you don't have to drive it into town and ship it at a market. You just sell, it's a live auction online, and he gets commission. So Will's skills are in that. So we have to get help in other ways, because he didn't take welding, he didn't take electrical, right? If a person gets in those industries, you want to have those skills too. Business for me is the biggest one. You need to understand the financial intricacies of this business, but we have to hire help. So we have to hire a welder, we have to hire an ag mechanic that comes out and helps us do those things. Now, one of the things Will does do, thanks to technologies, is YouTube, right? We put down a YouTube video and watch, and he looks at that for help to fix things. But I mean, this is a picture of our yearlings. So these yearlings would be listed, online they would be considered backgrounded. They took off running because they're young animals, but they would be listed, they would be backgrounded animals. They would be spring calves that we would have fed to put on some extra pounds and then get a higher price down the road. Now, that's a risk, because what if along the way some of these animals die and then we've taken loss? We actually had a really tough year. One year we had it was before COVID, but we had a contagious respiratory virus go through our herd. And so the first day we were at a hockey tournament, my guy that Will had feeding told Will we had 8 dead in the pen. And then the next day was 11 dead. And it was yearlings about this age that were worth probably 1,500 an animal at that point. We ended up losing 35 head that year. And so that is a significant loss that's not insured, that ended up being a very contagious respiratory virus. And so they had done vaccinations, and they figured it came out of some pasture land. We had put the cattle up north by Saskatoon, that there was some maybe elk or some kind of virus living in the alfalfa where our cattle had visited after, unknowns to us, right? And so they came home. We did 2 rounds of vaccinations, had a vet come and look, a second vet, autopsies, and thankfully saved the rest of our herd. But that was a very costly experience, not just in loss of our animals, but in the cost to vaccinate and vet time to get them back in shape. So, there's those risks, and you kind of think you win some, you lose some. And I mean, people would sometimes take that loss and be done, like walk away. This is too much. I think the mental strength of a farming operation is what's kept us together and kept us working as a team, because those things you can really drag you down. And I think just in life too, that you can go through difficult situations. I think you kind of have to take it and learn, what did I learn from that? What did we do wrong? Can we do better? And park it. Because if you let it hang on, it's just too much. And so you have to just go persevere. we've had the support of a lender to help us through good times and bad, because that might have meant we couldn't make those next loan payments that we were counting on this revenue to make. So it's a good life. I mean, here we're having some fun. This is before it was a big snowfall. This is our corrals. We ended up buying an old set of corrals that we've been fixing up over time. Would I love a new barn here? Yes. But financially, we got to get a few things in row. And we're not going to get into debt until we can afford it. And because a barn is a nice to have, not a must have. So we spend our money on things that we must have. And so one of them was upgrading the steel to make it safer for to handle our cattle. And that's one of the things we put money into. But we have to be very careful, like I said, because you could have that wreck that happens. And then it's a tough go. But I mean, walking through the hills, we see the crocuses, the cactuses, we get to ride our horses and be with family. So the times, there are a lot of more good times than bad. But I think the spirit of entrepreneurialism is and optimism as well, because we wouldn't keep doing what we were doing if we didn't believe that tomorrow's going to be a better day. Here's a picture of canola. We were actually harvesting this just before we seeded because it snowed early that year, and the swaths looked terrible because the deer had laid in them all winter. And yeah, so we had to harvest this in May. We actually should have took a picture because we had a combine, sprayer doing the weeds, and an air seeder right behind. So this was left out all winter. Now canola is an oil seed, right? It can make canola oil, so it can withstand the winter. Lentils couldn't have, or other grains couldn't have, but oil we can. And so we harvested it and picked up what the deer had left behind because they had eaten quite well that winter, and then sprayed the weeds and then seeded right behind it. So I think that's some lessons. Lisa, I don't know.
Yeah, I've got lots and lots of questions, lots of things. As I listen to you talk, I know, farming is big business, and it's just grown and grown over the years. It's no longer your local farmer with a section of land and a few head of cattle, or, it's huge. And it requires lots of skills and knowledge. And you have to be a lifelong learner. You have to, have optimism and perseverance. What do you think, like you talked about the financial side of things for students, wanting to get into it, what could they do educationally, and what do they do ongoing because there's so many things that you have to learn and know about?
Well, we talk about Will's background, and he took ag business, ag economics major and ag business minor through the University of Saskatchewan. I think that definitely set him up to understand the economics, right? This is macroeconomics, this is world. I mean, even just something as simple, you'd think the US interest rate, not simple, but the US exchange rate with Canada, you hear about it changing. That impacts the cattle industry huge. Just currency changes. So when Will worked for Northwest Beef, they were looking at implementing a plan to protect consumers from interest rate fluctuations, because that's a risk. So if the US dollar goes up against the Canadian dollar, our cattle are worth less. So our producers lose. So trying to lock in foreign exchange contracts, understanding, what right now Will's putting out, people are sending us all the time if we want to lock in contracts for lentil prices. He's filling out our crop insurance. And do you take in-season pricing? Do you take, understanding in-season pricing means what's the price of the grain when we harvest it? Well, look at what happened when Russia invaded Ukraine. Ukraine's a huge producer of agriculture, and it completely cut their production. So unfortunately, a less supply means a better price for us as producers. So world events affect it. So having a macroeconomic understanding of relationships was really helpful, because if you're a partnership or you're a group, you have to understand that you cannot function without an understanding of global markets, and just and listening all the time. Will is reading and watching TV and news and market reports, listening to the experts. Also that, like you said, ongoing learning. So an understanding of business, taking just basic classes in high school, basic accounting, a finance class to understand debt and respecting debt, saving for a rainy day, that having that, not that, you're supposed to have a cash flow account, some buffer to kind of get you through, but understanding to have some sort of backup plan. What is risk mitigation? What is risk? What risks are present? So looking at risk all the time, when to cut your losses, when sometimes will it be better to just walk away than to continue to go and spend money on something. So I cannot underestimate the value of business education, no matter which career, but especially in this business, because the risk is great. I mean, if you're going to put $400,000 just on bare land, you haven't even seeded it yet. If you go buy some of these big air seeders, that between the tractor and the air seeder tank and implement is $1 million. And so those big farmers, I mean, we didn't pay that for ours. We paid substantially, like a quarter of that price, but that's big to us because we need to spread that cost over our acres. So the analyzing per cost acre of production is big, knowing our per cost revenue and our per cost production. We've worked at reducing that over time because we had large upfront costs. We had to buy corrals. We had to buy that cattle handling facility. We had to buy because Will's dad didn't have cattle. So when we got into cattle, all those cattle input costs run us. So the mixer was 55,000. Now that same mixer is probably 75,000 now. So, but everything's relative. So if we wanted to buy something else, might seem high now, but in the end, it might, like 55,000 seemed high at the time. So that knowledge and that really making a conscious effort to understand risk, because people, I was a banker and saw people go under. I had a customer that came in the spring to get an operating line of credit. Now farmers operate usually on a line of credit. We borrow against the upcoming season. It would be much better if we had cash in the bank and we could take 300,000 and buy our fertilizer and our seed, but and the fuel alone, we'll spend thousands of dollars every month on fuel when it's seeding and harvest. So it would be nice if we had that cash, but most people would probably operate on a line of credit until, like I said, you get your land paid off and those big payments are gone. But I mean, we're always buying land, so I don't know if that's ever gone. But I had a farmer come in and apply for a line of credit at the bank, and as a banker, Will and I weren't farming it. He had just owned that one piece of land with his dad. I was a banker, and I said to my customer, "What are you seeding this year?" Not sure. And I'm talking, this was a March conversation. He should absolutely have that plan in place. So the business plan part of it, like what are you selling? What are you seeding? How many acres? He couldn't tell me what he was seeding. He didn't know how many acres. He had no upfront projections. So understanding just basic spreadsheet, just a projection. So projected revenue, projected expenses, projected yield. I mean, that is variable because of the weather, but all of those that knowledge is what's going to keep you afloat. So this guy I don't think lasted long, and he came in actually for a mortgage as well. And he was denied. He had terrible credit because he didn't pay his bills on time, but that was evident in his lack of planning. And I felt bad for him because he really, I think, was trying to farm like he used to farm, right? We seed durum, we drive it to the grain elevator in the fall. Like most people have cattle, they sell their calves in the fall run. I mean, looking for ways to diversify your business is what keeps you afloat. Planning, being a good manager, managing crisis situation. We had a combine drop fireballs into our field because it was so hot that year. It was creating static, and the static was lighting the straw and the fibers, like the dust fibers coming off the crop. So I came over the field and I could see droplets of fire in the field. So crisis right there, right? We need to stop, check the equipment, put out the fire. Like, we haven't lost equipment in a fire, but been close several times. So, there's lots to managing business, but I think it's more complicated than people realize, but it's in a good way. Like, it's never changing. It's always changing and never the same. But I think you have to have that mental mindset to manage challenging situations, which is why I like people to enter that industry and see. Our kids been stepped on by cattle, been run over by something, like hit in the head with something, like, not that it's abusive, but they're always managing something on a changing basis. Like, go pick up this. Haley got a flat tire on the way to a field to pick up Will. Like, got stuck with the quad. It's always, I'm not worried about them going off in the future and facing difficult situations, because there's been, probably yesterday, there was 5 major things that happened that is just another day. And I think if you can keep that calm mindset, just, it's one more thing that happened today, move on and fix it. I mean, short of financial devastation, you got to keep a good attitude. And if that's challenging, that's maybe not the right industry. I think supporting the egg industry is a very good option because their demand is always going to be there. The production side is a whole nother level, and we get help, and help comes in, and we need that help. But maybe managing that's HR, that's personnel. They may wreck something, break something, managing crisis and 17 moving parts, and Will's got a phone call from a trucker that's coming in tomorrow. Well, the yard's, full of the air seeder, not cleaned out yet, or there's still snow and he's going to wreck the road, or, it's anything and everything on a daily basis. And I think that's why we love it and hate it at the same time, but we stick with it because it's a great way to live in terms of being outdoors, being in control of your destiny, and honestly, noble work to feed the world. The work we do is very valuable and important in this world. So we keep doing what we do. I mean, you see these cute guys born in the spring. We're just starting calving now, and it just Mother Nature takes care of us in good times and bad, and hope that optimism carries forward.
Yeah, I was thinking that I was writing, making notes saying, you must have I can see, the passion that you have for the work that you do, and even the difficult times that you have to overcome, but nature helps you, give you that satisfaction that you're feeding the world, and the things that you get to do out in nature, seeing the calves and the crocuses in the field and riding your horses and things. I mean, that helps to build work-life balance for you as much
Yeah,
as possible, because that's key. Students are always wondering, how do I
yeah,
have work-life balance?
yeah,
It's obvious that economics is a huge part of farming in today's world, and kids, that's maybe one place, if they're, graduating, that you want to start doing something in
yeah.
economics. It's more than just the equipment and the animals and producing and all of that. There's so many aspects to running a good farm, and you just kind of got to get started somewhere. But I also heard you talk about the supporting industries as well. So there's lots of ways that students can become involved, not necessarily by being a producer.
Yeah.
They can get in the support industries: service, sales, agronomy, marketing, technology, welding, other trades that, and it's the key to your success
Yeah.
partly has been by accessing those supporting trades or supporting industries, to help you be successful. So, we're all in this together, and it's exciting to see that you don't have to be somebody who's got the family farm
Yeah.
handed over to you. And even if you did, you're going to be successful, you need to rely on others.
Absolutely. Like we have a guy from a welder from Pennant that comes over and welds Will's work, or Abby, I guess he's from, on the farm, and we rely on him. We have, well, we have to ask sometimes if the equipment's broke down in the yard, we've got to get an mobile egg mechanic to come out and look at the equipment where it is. I mean, it's very expensive help. Sometimes it's $100 an hour or more. But those partnerships we need, the agronomist that I mentioned is vital to our operations. Those plans, looking at what do we need for seed, how much, just helping Will calculate the bushels for seed, the crop planning for the year, measuring precipitation. Those are extra jobs Will just does not have time for. We don't have a staff of 10. We cannot afford it, right? And like I said, we operate on a shoestring budget because we have to be careful, because we have earmarked money for payments that we are obliged to make on our land or equipment loans. And so we have to utilize the time we have and the people we hire to the best. So hiring those off-farm consultants to come in and help us has been the best way to us to, get that outside knowledge that we may not have or have time to do to support our farm. Yeah. And I think that's an amazing industry. That's a huge industry. That'll never go away. And with our population growing, the complexity of the farm, just the technology behind it. Look at drone services. People use drones to count their herd. So when you see these hills, we're not going to ride through these hills. You can see our cattle in the background and count. So keep track of herd or even herd health. You can take a drone up and see if a cow's down or someone looks sick. Counting bales, they've used drone technology to count bales. So the tech industry has been huge, like GPSing our field. We map out our fields, and just for seeding so we don't overlap and waste seed, there's less waste. it's more precise. So precision farming is big, is the huge next thing. So if kids like a bit of tech but want to be outside but like farming, like supporting the industry that way is huge. So that industry is a real opportunity for students. If you want to be in the industry and like a little bit of tech, like some video games, go take some precision ag courses and look, maybe support the industry that way, because I have a drone sitting in the cupboard. I need to learn it, but when do I have time? I'm also working full time, help Will on the side, might run something out, pick up a part. I don't necessarily have the time or capacity to learn. So we have to hire someone to do that part of the business for us if that's what we decide to do. So
Wow, it's just amazing to see how the world of agriculture has changed over the years. I mean, I have a family background in farming as well. I didn't grow up on the farm, but just to see how things have evolved and the skills that you need in order to continue. And I think that all those supporting industries have continued to grow and grow, and so that it opens up opportunities for students from a variety of skills, a variety of likes and dislikes,
yeah,
passions, to be able to be involved and make a difference in the world of agriculture.
yeah. Yeah, it's big. It's a big industry. Like even just look at transportation. We would love to own our own semi, but to maintain a semi, to have a semi driver, the insurance, the costs of owning a semi are prohibitive for us. We just can't get there yet. My son maybe would get a semi license down the road, but given this, me and Will, his dad's almost 90, we can't have that staff on hand, right? So we hire semi drivers from Kyle, and so just supporting the industry that way, you can make an excellent living just hauling cattle and grain where they need to go. Just supporting that industry around the farmers. Like look at everything we do, we get trucked in or truck out. So delivery drivers for the pellets came in the other day. Will's getting seed sampling done. He sent out a sample to whoever counts the seed and figures out the sample. So all of the industry is huge, and the supporting tentacles of it is huge to make the best of the farm, and the best, for this year we want the best outcome possible with the least waste and the most efficient and the most highest yield of our animals, of our crop, of our ground. Like we take care of the earth, so we continuous crop, which means we would harvest, leave the stubble behind so it retains the moisture, and seed something else. Even just diversifying the crop rotations, we have to look at disease. So lentils one year, you can't plant lentils again or legume there again. So you have to put another cover crop or sorry, a cereal in there like durum or oats or barley or something different. So planning those crop rotations, Will's probably spent the last month with our agrologist just planning that to ensure we have no disease or carryover or residual or do you want anything residual to spray or weeds to creep in, or if there's mold or something that was happening in a field last year, you don't want that to carry into the next year's crop, because then that's a write-off and that's a waste. So yeah, it's very technical in planning. And again, it's because the costs are high, the stakes are high, and you got to protect yourself with what are our risks and cover them with insurance. How do we make the best use of up, and that might mean our land, getting agrologist help. How do we use our equipment most efficiently? And that might mean getting outside help with a mechanic or a welder to come help us. Make financial management and planning. We hire an accountant and a lawyer and our lender, and we communicate all the time. I do the bookkeeping and then get an accountant to finish it. So those bookkeeping skills to manage our cash flow. I have a spreadsheet going like money in, money out, because you might just get one paycheck a year. So how do you live on one dump of cash per year? I mean, we get occasional things, but realistically, we don't have regular cash flow. So managing cash flow and those skills. So there's lots of opportunity to support the industry in various roles for sure.
I guess the lesson that I learned from listening to you today too is that, if you're somebody who is in agriculture already, there's ways for you to continue. If you're somebody who has some ideas of what you'd like to do in the future, some skills and likes, I think you can always connect it to agriculture. If you're interested in agriculture, by all means, look at how you can infuse those skills and likes into something that allows you to work in the agriculture industry, and you can create the career that you're passionate about. It's obvious that you and Will are passionate about the work that you do. Resilient, of course. Very, you shared with us lots about perseverance and your optimism today. And yeah, it's been an awesome experience in listening to just the vastness of a career in agriculture, way more than a person might consider.
Well, and if I can end with one of the things I love hearing the most is when a student from a non-farm background wants to go into agriculture. There's a couple that I've heard of recently. They're just really interested. They go see Agribition. They see, the big trucks driving around with the cowboy boots and like, oh, I want to be part of that culture. The kids enter the industry. Honestly, start by taking an egg certificate program. It's offered in Great Plains College. It's offered through Lakeland. Take something that gets you started, gets you learning, and go, okay, this is, and you unfold those layers and see how more complicated it might be than you thought, and get that foundational knowledge. Put yourself out there. Try and get an entry-level job. The co-op has junior agrologists. I know the agrologists in town have helpers. Chemical companies, they service farmers with, we need spray, we need, even just spraying people's pesticides gets a bad rap. We have to have that to control pesticides. Otherwise, they eat the crop and then we get less yield per acre. Not just hurts us financially, but if we have less yield, so we're having to have more land to grow that same amount of crop. Again, remember, we're growing food. So if we can get the most yield per acre, we need pesticides to control pests and herbicides to control weeds. We have to, otherwise those weeds will take over. Plant a garden and see what happens if you don't control the weeds and the bugs. Like, you won't have anything left. And that's the same with farming, except we have put in a lot of money and time, and our output is shipped. We ship 75% of agriculture products in Canada to other countries. So we only consume 25% of what we produce in Saskatchewan. So we are literally feeding the world. AGT Foods, I think last count there were 48 countries that they ship our lentils and chickpeas to, and peas. So we literally feed the world. Half of Europe, all of those places get our food products. And not everybody has such wonderful arable land like we do. And so we have the ideal climate, the ideal land, not always the ideal rainfall, but again, it works in cycles. And so it's a very exciting, huge industry that's never going away. And more environment, we are the ultimate environmentalists because we upcycle, we take care of our land, we take care of our health of our animals. We have to. Otherwise, we don't have an existence if we were reckless. And so we are careful, and we really do our best work to grow high quality food products for the world.
Wow. It just goes to show that anybody can feed the world. Get
Yeah.
into something that allows you to feed the world and have that satisfaction, like you said, that the satisfaction of that you are making a difference in the world.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It truly is. I mean, look at if we have 200 head of steers, there's 200 families we may have fed, or whatever, right? It really does impact the world. And yes, we gain income from it, but that's business, right? We grow a product and sell it. But the product we're selling is not just a shirt I wear 3 times and throw it. It's actually feeding the world. It's high quality, high protein, high value food that humans need. We need the products we're producing. Especially protein sources that we're producing. People need protein to be healthy. Lots of parts of the world don't eat protein simply because they can't afford it or don't produce it. And we have it right here growing in abundance. So it's pretty proud to be part of the industry, and for students to be part of it, I think you'll really feel like you're making a difference.
Yeah. Okay. Well, thank you very much. This will be posted on YouTube so others can hear it as well.
Wonderful. Thank you so much.